guys are enjoying the mix so far. It's a bit deeper than usual, but some really great tunes. Up next, we got us one of our songs. It's Honest. It's a Dave Odd remix. We hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get back into the music and hope you're enjoying your day.
Act alert trade. Trend reversal up alert dollar HPP Hudson Pacific Properties trade IDs via to free trading room. At T Penusa, this is the best infrastructure week ever. At Scopperseller, I just wrote a letter to the editor about how I make $51.99 more per paycheck because of President Trump's tax cuts, which is $1,247 more in my pocket per year. Hope it gets published. For they feeling. At Preparara, how about some sanctions now, Mr. President? At Ed Grasson, Robert Mueller has indicted 13 Russian nationals for helping Trump win the election. Remember, Congress voted to punish Russia for interfering in our elections and Trump refused. This should be considered a crime itself. He is aiding and abetting Russia's continued interference. At Martin Selner, at BreakByIvon. My video with at BreakByIvon about the 120dB movement was strike for hate speech. At Funder. According to Mueller's indictment of the 13 Russians, they started planning election interference in 2014. They spent millions, had hundreds of staffers, organized and met with each other in the US, posed as Americans, organized rallies and continued their fraud after the election. At Amy Siskin. Please let this be the beginning of the end of this tragic attempt to take over of our great nation by a puppet regime installed by a foreign dictator. At Plenty Pics. Mauritius underwater waterfall by
supposed to call you, but I don't know what to say at all. And there's this girl, she wants me to take her home. She don't really love me though. I'm just on the radio. 'cause I think about it every night. I'm not sober and I know I keep these feelings to myself, like I don't need nobody else, but you're not the only one on my mind. If I'm being honest, if I'm being honest, you said I should be honest, so I'm being honest.
Tell us what we know at this point about this indictment.
Well, what we know right now is that 13 Russians and 3 companies have been indicted for hacking the election. This is really the most aggressive stance and position that the authorities within the intelligence community have taken against Russia, particularly from a business standpoint, against the Russians for their meddling in the 2016 election. Now, of course, this is breaking as we speak, but we should note the politics of this. President Trump on his way, no public events scheduled where we would be hearing from him about this today, but it comes at a time increasingly when this week you had Vice President Mike Pence criticizing the Russians for their meddling. And we all know what President Trump has said on this, or not said on this, rather, on this very topic.
So, Kevin, just briefly looking at the indictment, even as you're talking, we do know who the individuals are in the 3 companies. It's not under seal. We have the names. It says it goes back as far as 2014 when they first started. Apparently that they were impersonating, according to this, U.S. entities and individuals as they tried to interfere with the election. Do we now have any idea about where the location of these people or these companies are?
Well, that's where all of this is going to be headed, is whether or not, number one, these Russian folks and these Russian businesses are going to cooperate with the U.S. authorities, and we've seen, of course, some back and forth on that.
Germany SSP and Emerson latest I love notes
greeted with criticism from Republicans even on Capitol Hill. So the question becomes, will the Russians even cooperate with
tragic
them?
comic photos of everyday life in former East Germany RCW 16.2018.
Damning indictment on behalf of the U.S. authorities.
Margaret, President Trump has in the past cast some doubt on Russian meddling in the elections. Tell us a little bit about what his stance has been so far. What do we expect from him?
Well, listen, there's going to be a very crowded gather to watch him depart now for Florida.
New York prosecutor sues Harvey Weinstein's studio ahead of reported Dale News DW World 2.2018.
More details are going to emerge. Is that it says explicitly that defendants posted derogatory information.
Prosecutors seek 18 years in prison for German-Turkish reporter Deniz Yücel Friends 24.
That included supporting the presidential campaign of then-candidate Donald
The New York Times fires tech writer Quinn Norton, and it has complicated wired.
Squarely for the president to answer something that has been a little more esoteric so far. It's been in testimony, intelligence agencies. This is where the rubber meets the road. And Mr. Mueller and his team, their investigation and the FBI's investigation has always had multiple parts, right? Part of this was always about examining Russian interference or alleged Russian interference in elections. And then other pieces of that probe, the federal investigation and the special counsel's investigation, have looked separately at whether there was any coordination or what the contact was with the campaign or folks affiliated with the campaign.
Turkey, us to work together in Syria, Friends 24.
First question, which was singularly on the part of what was the Russian involvement, what was the Russian interference. But this, to some extent, fulfills that desire to show that Mr. Mueller is doing work and that things be brought to a conclusion. This is a major development, but it does now put a political focus very squarely on the president's public response to this.
And we have this breaking news from the FBI. I want to read this carefully to all of you because it is quite astonishing. It is an FBI statement on the Parkland shooting that on January 5th, 2018, a person close to Nicholas Cruz contacted the FBI's public access line, a tip line to report concerns about him. The caller provided information about Cruz's gun ownership, desire to kill people, erratic behavior, and disturbing social media posts, as well as the potential of him conducting a school shooting. I'm reading continuing from this FBI statement. Under established protocols, the information provided by the caller should have been assessed as a potential threat to life. The information then should have been forwarded to the FBI Miami field office, where
surging inflation will stay $1 as the Fed ramps up rate hikes, wealth manager says.
The FBI says, we have determined that these protocols were not followed for the
The story
information
of KFR
received
Noble
by the
Hospital,
public
41 minutes of
access
health Syria
line
deeply.
on January 5th. The information was not provided to the Miami field office. No further investigation was conducted at that time. FBI Director Christopher Wray said, quote, we are still investigating the facts. I am committed to
Why
getting to the
Syria and
bottom
the
of what
US
happened
clashed for
in this
control east of
particular
Euphrates, Syria
as well
deeply.
as reviewing our processes for responding to information that we receive
Alex
from the
Jones
public.
info hours there is a war on for your mind.
Continued. It's up to all Americans to be vigilant, and when members of the public contact us with concerns, we must act properly and quickly. Ray concludes, we have spoken with victims and families and deeply regret the additional pain this causes all those
Will
affected
robots need search
by
warrants?
this
Alex
horrific
Jones
tragedy.
info hours there is a war on
All
for
of the
your
men and
mind.
women of the FBI are dedicated to keeping the American people safe, and we are relentlessly committed to improving all that we do and how we do it. That concludes an extraordinary statement from the FBI acknowledging a major error in not passing on a tip, a specific tip on a public
Who budget
access
chief
line
wants billions
to
more
the
from
FBI
Germany post-Brexit
from
news
someone who
DW
knew
16
Nicholas
2.2018.
and it was never referred to the Miami field office. I believe we have Ken Delanian, and Ken, share with me your response as well, because I have rarely, if ever, seen this kind of statement from an FBI director in response to an overlooked tip that should have been
Totally
followed
East
up
tragicomic
in a
photos
major
of everyday
American
life in
shooting.
former East Germany
I
Ars
agree with you. I haven't seen anything like this either,
16
Andrea. It's remarkable, but it seems to have been a remarkable error. And I think it really speaks to the difficulty that the FBI and other intelligence agencies are having with this
We was warned
problem
about teen behind floor the high
of
school
active
shooting friends
shooter
24.
threat, of where somebody crosses the line, whether it's a sort of Islamic
Russian troll
extremism,
factory
or
charged
in
with
this
election
case,
interference.
just simply a mentally ill person who goes over to violence. And we've seen this time and again where in all these cases there were signs, and we don't have a system in this country where this stuff can be easily passed on and coherently investigated. Now the FBI is saying obviously it should have happened in this case, but it's a system based on human beings. Human beings make mistakes. There clearly needs to be some overhaul of protocols here, so people understand where they can report this information, and so the authorities.
The shifting role of women in Syria's economy is Syria deeply.
But this can, just to reiterate from their own acknowledgement of the FBI statement, this was not ambiguous. This is not a case where the mother in Newtown did not turn in her son, and where family and friends do not report erratic behavior from someone. This is
Ethiopia's prime minister resigns after mass protests France
to the
24.
FBI at some level, which was not referred to Miami. And I'm not sure, of course, you and I do not know where it was turned in. Cruz had gun ownership. He had a desire to kill people.
Brexit deal should strike fair balance, says Germany as Merkel.
Disturbing social media posts, which obviously were not followed up, as well as the potential of conducting a school shooting. It could not have been a more specific tip.
You're absolutely right. Of course, what we don't know is what would have happened had they
Presidentes
followed up
de
on it.
Weekend
Because,
Gear Sales
you know,
2018,
even if
Sonos,
they had done
Bose,
so,
Dell, and
it's
more
not
wired.
entirely clear that they could have intervened in a way that it would have changed the outcome. We've seen cases where, for example, in the Boston Marathon bombing, where they did evaluate Tamerlan Tsarnaev, and they did investigate, and yet they closed the case, and then he went on to become further radicalized and commit that act. So this is just a really difficult problem that I think all of society is still coming to grips with. It's getting worse and clear, but clearly, as you said, in this case, a clear unforced error by the FBI.
And this is such a major error. Tom Costello joining us now as well. This tip came in on January 5th, 2018. So we're talking about
White House blames Russia for NotPetya, the most costly cyber attack in history. Wired.
Behavior was potentially becoming more violent and more aggressive.
As you laid out, this was a very specific tip with very specific
Proven Russian
details
bots flood
about
Twitter after Parkland shooting. Wired.
Mr. Cruz's behavior was so concerning, and it follows not only the September incident in which there was this YouTube post in which he claimed that he wanted to be a professional school shooter. They failed in that account, and I got to tell you, over the last 48 hours, we have heard from a lot of people who just simply don't understand how they could drop the ball on this. This is the FBI,
Matt White,
which says
national
that they were unable
political
to trace
columnist for
who
Yahoo.
posted that, and yet they're supposed to be on the trail of Russian hackers and North Korean hackers. If they can't figure out some kid in southern Florida had posted a YouTube statement stating that he wanted to in fact be a professional killer in a school environment, that really calls into question their level of expertise.
The admits failed to investigate tip on Florida gunman Nicholas Cruz.
Tracking down somebody who then go on it and mow down 17 children.
Must read coverage on Syria from 2017 Syria DP.
We now know, not only were they appraised of
World
this
news
on
breaking
two
international news and
separate
headlines.
occasions,
Sky News.
but the sheriff's department have been called to the House on numerous occasions, by some counts, more than 30 times over the course of the past few years, dealing with a kid who was violent, was acting out, was violent against his mother, was violent against neighbors' animals. So the red flags here were up and were waving in the wind for I would think, for at least a year, maybe 2 years. Even the school district recognizing that this kid
now you
should
could
not be
erase
on
England
campus
from your living
anymore.
room. Wired.
Yet, with all of that, he legally bought an AR-15, and somehow the FBI never connected the dots. So, can I make one last point on this, Andrea? This is an FBI that, as you know, is already under siege by the Trump administration for they've been criticizing their professionalism now for the last year. This further undermines the public's confidence, I would think, in this agency.
No, it's going to become a political issue immediately, and with the president heading down there as well, people are going to seize on this. And as we were pointing out earlier to you, Tom, that initial tip from the person concerned about
Facebook has creepy history of you. Alex Jones
He,
info hours there
Nicholas
as a warrant
Cruz
for your
signed
mind.
it with his name, and his name is spelled Nikolaas. That is not that common a name.
The humanitarian crisis in Syria's northern de-escalation zone. Syria deeply.
If somebody had signed it Nick Cruz, N-I-C-K, or Nicholas, C-H. But this unusual spelling, and they still couldn't connect the dots, still couldn't go back and figure out what the ISP was on it. I mean, I think that really calls into question whether they were
a timeline of the tightening siege in eastern Ghouta, Syria deeply.
And then the specifics. Let's just reiterate the specifics of what was called into the FBI on January 5th, raising questions about his gun ownership, desire to kill people, erratic behavior, disturbing social media posts, at the potential of him conducting a school
Syria
shooting.
2018, the major issues
How
for the
much
year
more
ahead.
specific
Syria
does
deeply.
the FBI need to be than to get that kind of a tip on January 5th?
You know, I should point out,
Deputies
to the
Burmese
best of
student
my
arrested
knowledge
after
also,
Snapchat threat of Fox
so,
Carolina
Tom,
21.
There is no ban or bar in Florida law against purchasing the AR-15,
No,
no matter
the
what your
Olympics will
mental
not defuse the
condition.
North Korea
That's
crisis.
part of the problem that many people are addressing.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
This is going to be one of the best guest mixes we've had so far.
California residents in mass panic after who they're letting out of prison early. They asked for it. People don't want to go
Doca
outside
insanity. Another judge
anymore,
blocks Trump
but
elects Jones
frankly,
info hours there is a war on for your mind.
California residents are having a tough time with what could be happening based on a 2-year-old ballot known as Proposition.
Let's take a look around. Whoa, this is amazing. I can't believe I found this. This is an interesting perspective. Turkey's operation in Afrin has complicated Washington's relations with two of its allies in Syria. The Kurds and Turkey leaving Russian won't act as arbiter between Ankara and Syrian Kurdish groups, according to Jonas Parello-Plessner of the Hudson Institute. No, the Olympics will not defuse the North Korea crisis. This is a good story, check it out. It was an inspiring sight. North and South Korean Olympic teams marching together behind a single unification flag. Could the opening ceremonies augur a new era of inter-Korean reconciliation? Not likely. Pyongyang still refuses to abandon its nuclear arsenal or start a dialogue with the United States. Meanwhile, Washington has announced that the toughest and most aggressive sanctions against the regime are forthcoming. When the Olympic flame leaves Pyeongchang, the nuclear crisis will return. When the Olympic flame leaves Pyeongchang, the nuclear crisis will return. And it will do so even if South Korean President Moon Jae-in tries to keep the spirit alive by accepting a rare invitation from Kim Jong-un to visit the North for a summit meeting. North Korea is close to being able to strike the American homeland with nuclear weapons. As National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster and Joseph Dunford, the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs, have made clear, President Trump finds this intolerable and has directed the military to prepare a preventive war option. Trump has also warned that the U.S. military is locked and loaded and threatened to totally destroy North Korea. Ellen DeGeneres explains Bitcoin. Take a good look at what I just found. You know that moment when you're all talking about Bitcoin but nobody really understands it? Well, TV host Ellen DeGeneres summed up that feeling perfectly Thursday. The comedian took it upon herself to explain to her audience what the cryptocurrency actually is. Everybody is talking about Bitcoin, nobody understands it, she said. It's like a plot twist in a confusing movie, when you're watching a movie and your friends are acting like they know what's going on, and you're like, yeah, I do too. Pretend like Bitcoin is a goat. Now it's adorable, and you want to pick it up and you want to pet it. But you can't because it's not there, it doesn't exist except for on that internet right there, just like Bitcoin is digital currency. DeGeneres explained that Bitcoin is like a stock market where people can make money off of it, but said that she'd rather own a baby goat than the cryptocurrency. Turkish court sentences 6 journalists to life in prison over 2016 failed coup. France 24. Hold up, this is really interesting. International News 24/7. Text by Friends24. Follow Friends24_ on Twitter. Latest update to 018-0216. Those sentenced on Friday include Ahmet Altan, the former editor-in-chief of Taraf newspaper, his brother, economics professor and journalist Mehmet Altan, and prominent journalist Nazlı Ilikog. The Altan brothers were charged with giving coded messages in a television talk show a day before the abortive July 15, 2016, military coup against President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Coinbase blames Visa for issues around duplicate charges. I found this scraping the internet. I feel so dirty now. Cryptocurrency exchange and wallet Coinbase blamed Visa for an issue that saw some users experience unauthorized money withdrawals. Coinbase said the change to the way payments made to its service are classified was to blame for the issue. Cryptocurrency exchange and wallet Coinbase blamed Visa for an issue that saw some users experience unauthorized money withdrawals, but the card service said it wasn't at fault. Coinbase users can link a credit or debit card to Coinbase and buy cryptocurrency immediately. Some users had been noticing that there were duplicate charges when they executed a transaction. In some cases, this drained their bank account to zero and even caused them to be charged overdraft fees. On Thursday, Coinbase released a statement in a series of tweets in which it said Visa was to blame for the problem.
Assault weapons, access to weapons of war that are killing people in our country. And so the White House needs to stop it. They need to come forward and look at this in a way that makes sense, that will help stop this carnage that's taking place throughout the country. And they need to really, again, let Speaker Ryan know that the NRA should not be controlling the agenda that's killing so many people in America.
Congresswoman Barbara Lee, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
At Real Daily Wire. Breaking informed V about Parkland shooter's desire to shoot up school. We ignored it. The left insists that the government must have complete and total control over guns in order to protect Americans from school shootings. But on free. At Jack Pasovi, Squint Snow, no Trump name on the list of 13 Russian nationals.
Kathy McMorris, Rogers, Republican of Washington State and the chair of the House Republican Conference. I apologize. I'm like mumbling. I don't know what's happening. It's a lot. Question for you this morning. We've had a big conversation over just the past couple of days in the markets here about the potential for inflation. There's a conversation about how tax reform has actually been will be a short-term stimulus, effectively overstimulate the market. What do you make of all these arguments?
Well, I'm hopeful. I'm very encouraged by the impact of tax reform already. Some said it was going to be Armageddon. It's clearly been a positive. The reports, individuals right now this month that are seeing their paychecks increase, more take-home pay. The long list of companies that have been, adding those bonuses and announcing better leave policies and higher wages. I mean, that's a positive, and we needed that for our economy. And our hope is that this is just the beginning, that it continues. I've talked to a number of businesses, small and large, who are still making their plans, but this gives them more confidence that we needed, that our economy needed, so that there would be a longer-term economic growth for America, more opportunities, really getting at that forgotten men and women of this country who want a better life.
I don't know if you saw this. We have conversation on this show all the time about carried interest. We've not talked about it this morning, but a number of hedge funds. Did you see this story yesterday? Have been moving to Delaware to try to capture basically a 20% rate. Some guys from Elliott Management and other places. Actually, our friend Mr. Sternlicht is doing this, trying to do this too. Mnuchin says that he's going to try to cut this out somehow. But how worried are you
Help
about
support our podcast that investigates Donald Trump, Russia, and corruption.
And effectively abuse the new system?
Right. Well, clearly our tax code
at Mindy Finn, at Real Donald Trump.
complicated.
The Kremlin waged sophisticated, psychological, asymmetric warfare on the United States. What is more un-American than at Real Donald Trump gaslighting Americans, telling them to look the other way or blame their own for pursuing retribution for Putin's attacks? At Thomas 1774 Payne. Obama calls for gun control in wake of Florida shooting. Former President Barack Obama has already called for gun control in the wake of the Wednesday South Florida school shooting that claimed a confit. At that week wait. Republicans anti-work for Americans go efficacy gun reform, no gun sense, gun control, DACA dreamers, DACA deal, DACA dreamer. At Charles Strangelo. R does not stand for assault rifle, R does not stand for assault rifle, R does not stand for assault rifle, R does not stand for assault rifle, R does not stand for assault rifle. If you don't even know what R stands for, how can you possibly understand what an R stands for? At Proud Sister. People indicted by Mueller, 13 Russian nationals for Trump campaign aids, 0 Hillary campaign aids, Trump campaign aids, who met W Russia, Trump, J.R. Kushner, Flynn, Page, Sessions, Manafort, Papadopoulos, Hillary campaign aids, who met W Russia, not a single one.
میزیاد کم باشم تقاضای من فقط حق من است حیاتی رو ما ستم باشم اسلام میگیم بریده شد برا انتقام
November of 2016, they then turned their efforts to be against President Trump, that their goal was to sow discord and chaos, not to promote a certain candidate, and that no Americans were involved in this plot that they uncovered. This is astonishing. It backs up what the Democrats have said all along. Dianne Feinstein saying it was all based on rumors and newspapers, but not necessarily evidence. Now we know that to be true. Democrats deceived this country, and they were caught today.
At Scrouter. Pure stupidity. Jimmy Kimmel blames the cop for Florida school shooting. At Red Raccoon. Live from Russia after Special Counsel Robert Mueller indicts 13 Russians for U.S. election meddling. At Jack Pasovi. Rosenstein just admitted that 13 Russians had no effect on the outcome of the election. At Tom Winter. The indictment against the 13 Russians is incredibly specific and detailed. If true, it provides irrefutable proof of payment, coordination, and enhanced propaganda efforts by the Russian government to support Donald Trump and disparage Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. At Chovel Belishi is. There one al thank you ten distribuers es. At Princess Bravato. Breaking Mueller just dropped another indictment. At John Cardillo. This indictment comes from a guy in his 70s who has never used social media, not understanding that no one takes bot accounts seriously. At Britjof, I don't care about black folks being unapologetically black in public at the movie theater. I love every single video and have laughed with enjoyment because some of us have to code switch all damn day at work. Fuck all that. Be black as hell and fuck who disagrees.
With individuals both known and unknown to the grand jury. That is significant because it means that there are people that Bob Mueller has effectively flagged as co-conspirators, and there are other people, according to the government, that he has flagged to himself and to his investigators, but not yet to the grand jury, and certainly not to those of us covering it on the outside. So that would suggest a criminal process here that has more shoes to drop.
At Salul. The indictment of 13 Russian nationals shows a multi-million-dollar conspiracy. Russians traveled to the Est to pose as Americans online and used social media to spread information to help Trump. These conspirators were in contact with people working for the Trump campaign. At Jordan Peterson, at Naomi Ackley, at Louis. Canadians, an offer how about at Naomi Ackline and her evil queen at listen to theatre with me in Toronto and debate the merits of a lead manifesto. They can expose me for the uninformed alt-right or the radical leftists accuse me of being. At Ben Shapiro, at Reds TV, at Pierce Morgan Breaking. Yes, I remember how the laws drastically changed after Omar Martin murdered 49 people at a gay nightclub and after Said Farouk and Tashfi Malik murdered 14 at a community center. HT at Reds Tees.
The Chainsmokers are taking a rest, so they could now bring you this week's guest mix on Nice Hair.
Just bang it. Just bang it. Just bang it. Just bang it. Just bang it.
Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing to cover the aftermath of this horrible high school shooting in Parkland, Florida. We're now learning more about the victims. We know who they are, how many were students, how many were part of the faculty, and we're also learning more about the suspect in this case, his background, some disturbing details coming to light, and the conversation now goes to whether or not there were red flags that were missed. Vladimir Dutier is in Parkland, Florida. Vlad, good morning.
Good morning, Emery. It's a question that a lot of people are asking because, as you pointed out before the commercial, look, taken in total, from what we know now, from hindsight, it's clear that there were certain issues that were affecting this young man and that ultimately perhaps led to the massacre that happened here at Stoneman Douglas High School. On the other hand, it's very difficult to know in the moment from the fragments of people that we come across in our lives what one particular incident means when it comes to judging a person, which is essentially what we're asking individuals, communities to do. So let's bring in Dr. Daniel Bober. He's a forensic psychiatrist. He specializes in mental health and addiction, and he's here with us now to talk about this. You've heard me talking to my
News and current affairs from Germany and around the world. DW.
You know, I struggle as somebody who considers themselves empathetic, who as a kid, you know, wore black all the time, listened to funky music that people didn't like, and people thought that I was a weird,
Berlinale opening Wes Anderson S. I love God no file feast film DW 15.2.2018.
Right, and you didn't become a mass killer. So you mentioned where hindsight, I think there's a little bit of hindsight bias here where people say, well, all the signs
Russia for not good with cyber attack news DW 15.2.2018.
traumatic experiences. But I see kids like this every day in my office, and they don't go and become mass killers.
So warns of high global danger of war news DW 16.2.2018.
These killers are not born, they're made over time from traumatic experiences, from abuse, from neglect. So a lot of the signs were there, but I don't think anyone could have predicted that he would slaughter 17 people.
So I don't want to make this discussion about the gun issue, but I gotta ask you this because you're a doctor and you say you see kids that are troubled that come into your office every single day. if somebody is troubled, if somebody is angry and they want to take their aggression out on someone, but they don't have access to weapons, the worst that they can do is, I mean, you hear this all the time.
Budget 2 billion more from Germany post-Brexit news DW 16 2.2018.
But the accessibility to weapons, does that change the equation at all?
Certainly just the presence of firearms increases the risk of violence,
to revive South
suicide,
Africa's stagnant
accidents.
economy,
But
Friends
look at
24.
Adam Lanza, the Sandy Hook shooter. He used his mom's gun.
Right.
So my feeling is if people want to get their hands on firearms, they're going to do it. If they're hell-bent on hurting other people, they're going to find a way to do it.
So now the question is, how do we help individuals like this? What
Pro-gun Russian bot split Twitter after Parkland shooting wired.
You know, the early discussion in the hours after this
Islamic State sympathizers go on trial in Berlin news DW 15 2.2018.
A lot of people said something, and yet nothing happened. No one connected the dots.
Right.
What does that say about, forget him for a second, what does that say about us as a society?
I think we are so self-absorbed in our own lives that we sort of keep our heads down and mind our own business. And so now I think we really need to start thinking of, as a community, what can we do for the good of everyone and not just what am I doing for my own life. We really have to be more attuned to these signs and speak up.
It makes me think, when you say that, the self-absorption that we as a society participate in, it makes me think of the Kitty Genovese story, which for maybe our younger viewers, Kitty Genovese was a young woman who was killed in New York City back in the 60s. She was screaming, and neighbors heard screams and
turned their head the other way,
and they sort of didn't call the police, blew it off because they didn't want to get involved. Now in the age of social media, where you could see a kid is posting pictures of animals that he's killed, he's done things that people find disturbing, and people
he's broadcasting his mind, what's going on.
Exactly.
Right.
And we are still at the level where we say, you know what, live and let live, not my business, not my kid, I don't want to get involved.
Right. And it's interesting you bring up social media, because there's been a huge uptick in these instances since social media, since Columbine. There's, with the 24-hour news
How
cycle
Russia
and
benefits
social
from
media,
Turkey
there's
as
been an
Afrin Operation
explosion of
Syria
these types
deeply.
of events, and I think a lot of it has to do with the narcissism, with the desperation for fame, for recognition on social media, and sort of the copycat phenomenon that we've been seeing.
And I guess the final question is,
Macron praised as French economy powers ahead, Friends 24.
Are we putting the burden on society, which might be a very large burden? Yes, people are self-absorbed, but they've got their own lives, they've got their own children to deal with, they've got, work issues, they've got
Canada
family issues.
postpones marijuana legalization.
Blackstone reported on an incident where a grandmother
Alex
noticed
Jones
something
info hours there is a warrant for
called
your
cops
mind.
and probably prevented a tragedy. Should we,
Simon
as
CO
families,
defense praising Trump force
this young
tax
man is
overhaul.
different, Nicholas Cruz, because his parents died, but I'm just talking about the larger issue here.
You know something? At the end of the day, what we're going to find out is
Prosecutors seek 18 years in prison for German-Turkish airport Deniz Yusuf, Friends 24.
You can look at all the signs, but you just can't really know when someone is going to go off. Yes, parents should be there for their kids. Yes, parents should have computers in a common area so kids aren't in their room sequestered away doing who knows what on the internet. But at the end of the day, we just have to try to be mindful about what's going on, but that still may not prevent it. Even when you're careful, things can still happen.
I mean, look, when I was growing up, my mom had a rule in the house: you cannot have the bedroom door closed at any time. She always wanted to be able to look in, and you can imagine for a 15, 16-year-old boy, that ain't a good thing.
Right.
But, it sort of kept me on the straight
Facebook
and
has
narrow.
creepy history of you. Alex Jones info hours there is a warrant for your mind.
That a lot of people are going to be struggling with over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Dr. Daniel Bober.
Correlation Watch Zero Hedge.
Eski devlet başkanı Jacob Zuma'nın istifası sonrası Afrika Ulusal Kongresi lideri Cyril Ramaphosa, Güney Afrika'nın yeni devlet başkanı seçildi. Halk çalkan Çalkantılı günler geçiren ülke siyasetinin ve yaklaşık 10 yıldır süren ekonomik durgunluğun Ramaphosa hükümetiyle sonlanmasını istiyor.
Matt White, National Political Columnist for Yahoo.
Çöküşe geçti. Ekonomi kötüye gidiyor. Şimdi Güney Afrika'nın eski günlerine dönme zamanı geldi diye düşünüyorum.
Ülkedeki en büyük sorunlardan biri de %30'lara yaklaşan işsizlik oranı. 1994 yılında demokratik sisteme geçen ülkede fakirlik de çok yaygın.
Güney Afrika gençliği olarak bizler çok çaba sarf ediyoruz. Kimileri eski başkan Jacob Zuma'dan memnundu. Ancak özellikle fakir olanlar onun yaptığı icraatları sevmiyordu.
Ramaphosa'nın
The shifting role of women in Syria's economy is Syria
ANC'nin lideri olmasıyla birlikte piyasalar inişli çıkışlı bir yol izlemişti.
France rate charges against Budget Minister Jail Garman in Drop News DW16 2.2018.
Şundan kesinlikle eminim. Yatırımcılar Güney Afrika'daki kısa ve orta vadeli siyasi süreçten dolayı endişeli. Bu sebeple Ramaphosa'nın bir an önce ipleri eline alması gerekiyor. İktidarını sağlamlaştırıp yapması gereken ilk şey de siyasi gündemi belirlemek olmalı.
Güney Afrika'nın efsanevi lideri Nelson Mandela'nın avukatlarından olan Ramaphosa, 1994 yılında yapılan ilk demokratik seçimler sonrası Anayasa Komisyonu Başkanlığı'na getirilmişti.
Well, rather than debate the rights and wrongs of US gun laws, again, instead we're going to talk to two people intimately and directly involved.
Angela Merkel must stop cozying up to Turkey. German opposition demands News DW15 2.2018.
1999 Columbine massacre. And in Blacksburg, the author Lucinda
Violence
Roy,
during Rio Carnival unacceptable,
professor at
Minister.
Virginia Tech University, where she taught the gunman responsible for the 2007 shooting. Thank you both very much for joining us tonight. First of all, if I can talk to you, Tom Mauser. I imagine every day is a hard day, but does it make it worse when you're reminded by yet another shooting in a school?
Oh, absolutely. It takes you back to that day, and you can just imagine what those parents are going through because you went through it too.
I'm going back for more data. I found this scraping the internet. I feel so dirty now. Check this out. Turkey's operation in Afrin has complicated Washington's relations with two of its allies in Syria. The Kurds in Turkey leaving Russia more to act as arbiter between Ankara and Syrian Kurdish groups, according to Jonas Parello Plesner of the Hudson Institute. Yahoo Mail free hash email with 1000 GB of storage. Check this out, it's high energy. Connect all of your accounts, easily share photos and animated GIFs, and get 1000 GB of free storage. Angela Merkel must stop cozying up to hash Turkey. German opposition demands bar news bar DW bar 15 2.2018. I can't believe it.
Usually I don't trick up, pick up like one or two. Then Daisy's known to be deadly, especially if I love you. I've grown impatient, I'm tired of waiting just for you.
Left and Green Party lawmakers have slammed Germany's Turkey policy ahead of Prime Minister Binali Yıldırım's visit to Berlin. They demanded tougher stance in the face of human rights violations. Green politician Sams Demir, who was part of a failed exploratory coalition talks with Chancellor Angela Merkel, who has again sharply criticized what he considers the government's overly friendly approach to Turkey. In a tweet, he called for press freedom, democracy and the rule of law to be reinstated in Turkey before relations could be normalized. In an interview with German public radio ahead of Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yıldırım's visit to Berlin on Thursday, he urged Merkel to stop cuddling with Turkey, given Ankara''s crackdown on dissenters, journalists and activists. Read more. Turkish-Russian missile deal puts NATO on edge. Whoa. Gee whiz. Amid unprecedented pressures on healthcare facilities in eastern Ghouta and the repeated failure to deliver life-saving aid, time is running out to improve the humanitarian situation and mitigate misery in the Damascus suburb, says medical researcher Dr. Annie Sparrow. Oxfam scandal. Charity to stop bidding for Ash government funding. Found the juicy. Penny Mordaunt makes the announcement and says hundreds of good, brave and compassionate Oxfam workers had been let down. (1946), Friday 16th February 2018. Oxfam has agreed to stop bidding for government funding until ministers are satisfied it can meet the high standards expected. International Development Secretary Penny Mordaunt said the charity had agreed not to bid for taxpayers' money amid allegations some of Oxfam's aid workers used prostitutes in Haiti following the 2010 earthquake. She said the government will take whatever decisions about past or future funding to the charity or others that we deem necessary. At Joe Gooding, at Monica Ray. This indictment admits that no American citizens were knowing participants in Russian meddling in the 2016 election, and seems to put to bed any collusion allegations from Robert Mueller. Can we please get back to running our country, Mueller?
Delicious matcha tea donut is made, and no one is there to taste it. Is it delicious? If a photographer captures the perfect moment...
At Inatakumaro 1. Accessions, it is now clear that the warning signs were there and tips to the FB were missed. We see the tragic consequences of those failures. Parkland school shooting.
Not enough to just make something. Make your business stand out with a beautiful website. Make it Squarespace. Start your free trial today and use offer code SoundCloud to save 10%.
I hear your name. It lights me up.
At Globalist Web. It has been.
Flies never seen.
In case you were wondering, I am slowly making my way through the indictment itself. Our team is moving more quickly here.
'Cause we both know this won't turn out great. We pose for pictures, we look so good, but this new love is so misunderstood. You and me toy around, it's all a game to us. At the end of the day, we're nothing serious.
Think about the timing of this, Alex. They released it the week of the Florida shooting. While the Florida shooting is dominating the media, the Florida shooting is dominating everything, the Democrats are freaking out. And then they just insert this kind of in the back burner like, oh yeah, here's our Russian collusion, here's the official document, while everyone is still talking about the shooters and talking about the shooting. So they released this intentionally, I think, while everyone was talking about the shooting, so that nobody will actually dig into the nuts and bolts in this, because it's nothing.
Well, remember about a month and a half ago, the last big wave of fake news, that they're desperate with only 2 indictments previously of U.S. citizens for not being colluding with Russians, but for supposedly giving false statements to the FBI about side issues. Those stories have all fallen apart as Russiagate has been exposed as a Democratic Party operation. But remember Behar when she announced, General Flynn admits he's a Russian agent. He's going to testify. They helped run the whole campaign. Yay, we got him. Remember that?
Back to the show.
Breaking news.
Oh my God. Oh, breaking news. ABC News' Brian Ross is reporting Michael Flynn promised full cooperation to the Mueller team and is prepared to testify
News and
that
current
as a
affairs from Germany
candidate,
and around the world,
Donald Trump directed
DW.
him to make contact with the Russians.
Yay! We'll kill the economy. Our president's a traitor. Yay! We'll F America over. Yay! I mean, that would be horrible. Even if I hated Obama or something, if that came out, I'd be like, God, this is horrible. But at least we're cleaning it up. It's totally made up. The Clintons are up their eyeballs.
Barack and Michelle Obama forces invading Washington. News DW World 2.2018.
You can't even get obstruction on them. So now, to have something, this is face-saving. It just hit me, Owen Schroyer, that they're going to go after low-level Russians that were running catering services and online consulting and had
Berlin Holly opening by Sanderson S. I love those visits of the no-file beast film DW 15.2018.
Come and advertise to you of what stories to run that are popular in the U.S. during the election, you know. So that's all they've got. So he's just desperately wanting to find something, indicting 13 no-name Russians and 3 companies that are just beyond small potatoes.
White House blames Russia for not much, the most costly cyber attack in history. Wired.
Bits at the bottom that aren't even worth eating. I mean, these are like a speck
President
of a speck.
Day Weekend
There's
Year
like,
Sales 2018.
Sonos now, almost all of it you've read
and
over.
more Wired.
It doesn't matter, like you said, Owen. Twitter is like, my God, it's like, oh, we caught Trump, Putin's wee-wee
Now you can
holster.
erase and win from your living room.
In bed
Wired.
with Putin. It's over. Yay!
Well, there's nothing even in this that I've seen that even mentions Trump other than these Russian bots they're saying on social media that are tweeting about Trump, forming social media groups about Trump. And we'll get into that in a second. But think about the timing of this, Alex. They released it the week of the Florida shooting. While the Florida shooting is dominating the media, the Florida shooting is dominating everything, the Democrats are freaking out. And then they just insert this kind of in the back burner like, oh yeah, here's our Russian collusion, here's the official document, while everyone is still talking about the shooters and talking about the shooting. So they released this intentionally, I think, while everyone was talking about the shooting,
Amtrak
so that
survivor
nobody
Richard
will
Nixon finished
actually
overcome
dig
Donald
into
Trump
the nuts
wired.
and bolts in this, because it's nothing. It's incredible. If they're going to indict people...
Well, I mean, they did have Facebook accounts and catering.
But if they're going to be
Italian
indicting
and
people
punching
over
a face to the down and
Facebook
outs in Paris, France,
accounts, I mean,
24.
where are they going to stop?
There's about 100 of them of me.
So that's what I'm saying. So it's like,
Moscow
how can
imposed
you
costs
use
on Russia
this
for
as an
cyber aggression,
indictment?
says cybersecurity
See,
czar.
that's why they sent out hundreds of thousands of letters now saying you're all Russian bots. And then even Twitter did a study and said these are real people. These are not Russian bots.
No, I've got the Russian collusion right here. According to Mueller's indictment, on April 6, 2016, an excerpt from a Russian advertisement says, you know, a great number of black people support us saying that Hillary Clinton is not my president. That was from a Russian bot. That's Russian collusion.
That's their proof.
How about April 7th here, Alex, April 7th. I say no to Hillary Clinton. I say no to manipulation. That was paid for by a Russian bot. We've got him. We've got him right here, Alex. We've got him on October 14th. We've got him right here on October 14th.
German Film Festival Berlin presently on kicks off in San Francisco. Film DW092.2018.
Defend all police from terrorists. It's right there. It's right there in the document.
And that means if these marketing companies piggybacked on anything else people were putting out,
North
the whole
Korea's
thing's a
Olympic
fraud.
diplomacy
That's what
hasn't
they
stopped
say.
attacking
They
Iran.
say if any Russian marketing of any type is connected to anything, even though they admit it's less than 1% of the internet activity, the truth is the Russians are not good at this. What about Hollywood? What about the big Hollywood firms admitted they created over 100 fake news accounts and flooded the web with fake news against Trump and against America. Last night, my son wanted to watch TV. We turned on Netflix. I never look at hardly ever. And it was like, I was like, I've seen 10 different documentaries in here about Trump being a shyster. And so I
Deeply
watched
talks
one
the
of them with my
future of
son
Syria's
last night.
female
It was
Syria
all
deeply.
made up crap. I mean, it's like you know he's good because Hollywood, everybody hates him. And
From India to Bayern, South Africa, the rise and fall of the Doctors Friends 24.
This is on page 20 of 37.
This shows the total devil bot rate. You know, I wanted to do a joke video where a news van pulls up. Almost wanted to hire like real reporters to do it as a joke. And they run in here and there's a guy who's like a little bot outfit. Maybe like a little red cherry out, like beep, beep, beep, beep, beep, beep, beep. And you like knock the door open and like,
zero.
It's me, beep, beep, beep, beep, beep, beep, beep.
And it's like our Russian bot coming and tell us what to do. So yeah, there's the page right there that has. But Alex,
I say no to
When
Hillary
robots
Clinton.
need search warrants, select join info hours there as you run for your mind.
I created Hillary for president 2016.
we literally
not
made
the Russians.
And you can probably find the date that we started that was before any of these tweets that they're
No, we've been selling that shirt. Well, no, we've been selling that shirt for like 6 months before that.
Watch out, Alex. They're going to indict you next.
Donald wants to defeat terrorism. Hillary wants to sponsor. Well, that was us saying that. Vote Republican, vote Trump, and support the Second Amendment. Oh my God! They even said the Second Amendment is now Russian. I've seen newscasts where they say, "Oh,
Washington Post."
That was 2 weeks ago. That was Schiff. He said the Second Amendment's a Russian plot. There's a press conference.
No, I know. The Washington Post published it.
Here, go back to this. Hillary Clinton doesn't deserve the black vote. That's Roger Stone and us exposing, you know, how she said blacks aren't human. We said that a year before that. Trump, notice all of these are our talking points. It's all us because we're vicious.
After we said it.
Trump is our only hope for a better future.
So if anything, we're influencing Russia.
Oh, look, hashtag Hillary for president. I sat there over 2 years ago in that office.
You didn't build that.
And I said hashtag Hillary for president. I created that.
You didn't.
You didn't.
I did.
The humanitarian crisis in Syria's northern de-escalation zone Syria deeply.
FISA court finally responds to Devin Nunes' demand for answers. Amy Moreno reports. Representative Devin Nunes from California is holding the FISA court's feet to the fire over the Trump campaign surveillance. The GOP leader has demanded answers from the court on how it handled questionable warrant requests from the FBI regarding President Trump's campaign officials. The FISA court finally responded to Nunes, stating they've never been asked for such information and need to figure out a way in which to respond. It sounds like stall tactics.
Life under siege, how people struggle to survive in eastern Syria deeply.
American people will not let this go. This is what the Washington Examiner reports. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, the FISA court, sent response letters to Republican leaders who requested certain documents related to investigations into surveillance of a Trump campaign aide, saying the court is analyzing the unusual requests. Well, what's unusual? All they have to do is give the application.
Telltale internet message may have overshadowed the Slovakia securities top hacking wired.
Court explained in a letter dated Thursday and sent to House Intelligence
Business News Markets reports influential news from Sky News.
Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte that the requests the court have received this year,
the big engineering behind the Olympic snowboarding is big air event wired,
has yet to be determined. What the frack? You know, just what? Well, if they can't get, well, why doesn't Tom Fitton help out and just subpoena them? Just ask for, not subpoena them, but ask for a FISA warrant. Now, before 2018, the court had never received a request from Congress for documents related
weather
to
forecast world M% local weather report online Sky News.
Thus, your requests, they say, and others I have recently received from Congress, present novel and significant questions, end quote, Collier wrote in her letter to Nunes. They're stalling. They know they're in trouble, and they're stalling. They don't know what to do themselves now. They're panicking, you see. Devin Nunes, Republican from California, wants the FISA court to turn over transcripts from hearings related to the FBI and Justice Department's application for and renewals of a warrant to conduct surveillance on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. Goodlatte, Republican from Virginia, sent a similar request to FISA court last month and also reached out to the heads of the Justice Department and the FBI. A memo compiled by Nunes and Republican staff in the House Intelligence Committee made public earlier this month alleged officials within the DOJ and the FBI used information contained in an unverified and salacious dossier compiled by Christopher Steele, former British intelligence officer.
Forget it. It's like a week ago, but we both know how weekends go. Tryna function, got some places we could go. Lotta got me speaking slow like I'm blessed, I'm blessed. I don't GAFOS, you tryna fuck. Yes on yes on yes on yes. Say less.
I'm going to take a look around. Crazy people everywhere. Now this is out there. Attorney and Tenenbaum peacemaker Ein Kabot writes about the deteriorating humanitarian situation for women in and around Idlib, where she co-founded the Jarjanas and Dere Women's Peace Center with the EU last year. Trump signs bill revoking Obama-era gun checks for people with mental illnesses. NBC News. This is amazing. President Donald Trump quietly signed a bill into law Tuesday rolling back an Obama-era regulation that made it harder for people with mental illnesses to purchase a gun. The rule, which was finalized in December, added people receiving Social Security checks for mental illnesses and people deemed unfit to handle their own financial affairs to the National Background Check Database. Had the rule fully taken effect, the Obama administration predicted it would have added about 75,000 names to that database. President Barack Obama recommended the now nullified regulation in a 2013 memo following the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School, which left 20 first graders and 6 others dead. The measure sought to block some people with severe mental health problems from buying guns. Related. Assault weapons not protected by Second Amendment, Federal Appeals Court rules. I found this scraping the internet. I feel so dirty now. Urban activists and residents in Syria's third-largest city say Assad's forces have intentionally destroyed traditional buildings in the city center, but not for military reasons. The driving force is a controversial urban planning scheme called Homsri.
To violations trying to interfere with the U.S. elections, in 2016 elections. We're still going through the indictment that's been returned here, but it appears this has to do with the Russian interference into the 2016 elections, and some of these individuals we assume are still in Russia and probably will maybe never be arrested by U.S. authorities, but this is the first action that we are seeing right now that directly relates to the interference that occurred in the 2016 election that President Trump still doesn't really believe actually occurred. Robert Mueller basically now saying not only did it occur, but we know who did it, and this includes this outfit in St. Petersburg, Russia, called the Internet Research Agency, which is the agency
busted our activity,
the front
not a joke.
for the Russian spy agency.
I got preoccupied with covering tracks together with the colleagues. Bob Mueller doesn't just have the original stuff. He also has the stuff of the people saying they're covering the tracks. And he's saying something I believe. I don't think this is in here. Let me put it a different way. Legally, you could do this indictment without that. This is in here because he is putting other people on notice, including potentially people who have not been indicted.
Atomilber. Mueller indictment lists 2 candidates that Russian defendants intended to support Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders.
there's so many like I relate to. You know that's somebody that gets on your last nerve, but you love them so much.
At Stop Trump 2020. Mueller investigation. Mueller is coming.
Said last so many times, but will we ever last? Nah.
Couldn't hear the thunder,
but I heard your heart break.
But I thought Donald Trump was the one who colluded with Russians. However, the same names keep popping up of government officials who. At Stallmeyer, at Av, Deputy Rosenstein on Special Counsel Mueller's indictment. Russians allegedly conducted what they called information warfare against the US, with a stated goal of spreading distrust towards candidates and political system. Russia gate hybrid war. At Jet Cannon. Rod Rosenstein. No allegation that any American was a knowing participant. Rod Rosenstein. No allegation in the indictment of any effect on the outcome of the American election. Thems. At 1776 Stonewall. Mueller just cleared Trump. I know the left will try and spin this, but the indictment says that no American was involved in this and that Russia ran anti-Trump rallies as well as pro- and continued anti-Trump propaganda after the election to injure Trump. This is the best news. At Biggs. So the FBI knew about the Internet Research Agency since 2014 and are just now concerned about it. So the FBI knew about Cruz and didn't he do anything? So the FBI conducted 3 interviews of Omar Martin before he killed people at Pulse. Scary pattern emerging.
If a delicious matcha tea donut is made and no one is there to taste it, is it delicious? If a photographer captures the perfect moment and no one ever sees it, was it perfect? If a small business opens and no one ever buys anything, is it a
At Fortune. Robots are screwed.
Make your business stand out with a beautiful website. Make it Squarespace. Start your free
Assault rifles! Assault rifles! Assault rifles! Assault rifles! Assault rifles! Assault rifles!
look at you, the way you move, effortless in all you do. I gotta say, being with you every day.
At Merkelux Damage. At Cernovic. Check out how upset at Cernovic and his gang are. He is trying to be a miniature media mafioso, but it is failing big time. These are his boys running a coordinated attack on. They are trying so hard to bring down Gab, but no one cares. Sad. At Circa. The FBI admits it did not follow procedure after a tipster called last month and warned about the Florida shooting suspect's gun ownership and his desire to kill people. At Jack the Sobeek. Leftists trying to explain how Mueller saying no American was involved with the 13 Russians means Trump is going down. On Friday morning, FB admitted they did not follow protocol in investigating the violent threats posted online by Nicholas Cruz. As reported earlier today by TGP-RE. At Marina Sinayam. At Biggs. Texas School District posts warnings teachers may be armed.
Medina ISD may be armed and will use whatever force is necessary to protect our students. The science speaks for itself, but we wanted to learn a little bit more about this. Joining us on the phone now, Penny White, the superintendent of the Medina Independent School District. Penny, I know you're looking at this not only as a official, but also as a mother of a student at the school. Why did you decide to put up the sign?
We wanted to be proactive in letting people know who came into our community that we take our students and our faculty, for that matter, safety very seriously, and that we were going to do whatever we needed to protect our students.
What's been the reaction to the sign?
I've not had any negative feedback coming from the office. I haven't had any negative emails or phone calls or anything. It's been very supportive. People in this community value, our kids are our number one asset, and so they value their safety very much.
Have you had any past history of violence in the school or past history of threats that might motivate you to put up a sign like this?
No, we have not had any. And this has been in discussion with the board and I for about a year. And we just decided that we wanted to do this. We wanted for people to know that we're going to protect our kids.
So how exactly does it work? There are some schools in our country that have, for example, private security guards or security guards that work through the city. And it's my understanding that this applies to any adult in the school, that they could be carrying a weapon. How would a teacher, let's say to you, Penny, I have a gun and I'm gonna bring it to school?
Well, they would have to ask me for permission to do that, and then they would have to go through a series of training, and they would.
Mueller has also obtained another guilty plea, this time to an identity theft charge. He too has agreed to cooperate to testify for this one charge. Calto Action background info, talking points & contact numbers here. One woman's account of the clandestine meetings, financial transactions, and legal pacts that hid a future president's extramarital affairs. Fox host falsely claims the Deputy Attorney General said indicted Russians didn't influence the outcome of the election.
Talking trips to Puerto Rico. Say the word and we go. You can be my flica. Girl, I'll be a flico, mamacita. I would never make a promise that I can't keep. I promise that your smile ain't gonna never leave. Shopping sprees in Paris. Everything 24 carats. Take a look in that mirror. Now tell me who's the fairest. Is it you?
The Thessalonian you're fighting. He's the biggest man I've ever seen. I wouldn't want to fight him.
That's why no one will remember your name.
Lori, have you gone mad? There is no glory to be had now. Only retreat, or surrender, or death. An age of freedom. And all will know that 300 Spartans gave their last breath to defend it.
It's an amazing thing about war, that an act of symbolism can be almost as important as the guns or the bombs themselves. This is a story how merely 16 tons of bombs changed the entire course of a world war. And what's even more remarkable is that every single bomber that took part in this raid was lost. A 100% loss rate. There are few events in history where an attack loses 100% of its planes and still could be called a success. For the European theatre, it was reckoned that a loss rate of merely 5% per mission was unsustainable for a bomber fleet. I mean, let me just give you this as a ballpark number. For the World War II as a whole, there were about 50 million dead and 50 million tons of munitions used, meaning that for the whole of World War II, for every dead person, which we'll say weighs about 100 kilos, it took about 10 times their body weight of explosives, of munitions to kill them.
Blue budget chief wants billions more from Germany post-Brexit news ZW16 2.2018.
To kill maybe 16 people. How could that ever be significant?
Carnival parade from millions across Germany news DW 2.2018.
Where the Allies were laying waste to Axis cities, typically dropping 3,000 tons of bombs at a time. Yet, without question, more was achieved by these mere 16 tons of bombs. And even stranger, at the time, these mere 16 tons of bombs was right on the limit of what the US military could do. I am, of course, referring to the Doolittle raid. Now, Doolittle himself was a remarkable guy.
Us blame Russia for not put a cyber attack news DW 15 2.2018.
Now, after Pearl Harbor, America really was on the back foot.
News and current affairs from Germany and around the world DW.
Every battleship of the Pacific Fleet was out of action, leaving merely 3 Virgin carriers to counter the 6 Japanese veteran carriers. Pearl Harbor was a devastating blow, both militarily and psychologically. The sentiment was pretty well summed up by Churchill. In all the war, I have never received a more direct shock. As I turned and twisted in bed, the full horror of the news sank into me. There were no British or American capital ships in the Indian Ocean or the Pacific, except the American survivors of Pearl Harbor who were hastening back to California.
Prosecutors seek 18 years in prison for German-Turkish airport Deniz Yusel France 24.
Japan was supreme, and we everywhere were weak and
Punting a face to the down and out in Paris France
The
24.
guy who organized the Pearl Harbor raid, Yamamoto, was also a clever guy. And from the other side, he'd had grave misgivings about the blow against Pearl Harbor and had predicted that he would be able to run amok for 6 months to a year, after which he had no long-term hopes of victory because he had seen the industrial might of America. And this prediction, you will see, is stunningly prophetic. Now, America had a problem. They wanted to strike back against Japan.
Nobel laureate Tutukwit Oxfam Ambassador Olympic JRTS sex scandal France 24.
They were going to take 2 of their surviving aircraft carriers and load one of them up with medium bombers. And they were going to
North
take
Korea's Olympic diplomacy hasn't stopped attacking wired.
Japan with it. And then they were going to fly the bombers onto China while the carriers
Life under siege, how
hightailed
people
it back
struggled to
to
survive in
sea.
eastern Syria
Now,
deeply.
there were many practical elements to this. The Americans had worked out that they could take
Carnival
these
parades
medium
from millions
bombers
across
off from
Germany
a
news
carrier.
DW
A marker was set up on
12.2018.
Eglin's airstrip to simulate the takeoff deck of a carrier. The crews had to get their B-25s airborne in 450 feet or less.
But that landing on a carrier was simply out.
Many potential data points are within range. I don't know what to think about this. Russian stocks stumble on Mueller indictments. Would you look at this? Russian stocks tumbled Friday afternoon after a federal grand jury indicted 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian entities for alleged interference in the 2016 presidential election. The Vanek Vectors Russia Exchange Traded Fund RSX, which tracks a host of publicly traded Russian companies, fell nearly 2% following news of the indictments. The fund is largely comprised of energy and financial companies, according to FactSet. The Ishar's MSCI Russia at Ferris, a similar fund, also fell roughly 2%. The downturn appeared to reflect investor fears over souring U.S.-Russia relations and that the latest developments could force President Donald Trump's hand in enforcing sanctions. Trump has been reluctant to enforce additional sanctions on Russia despite a new law designed to punish Moscow's interference, saying that the measure was already taking a toll on Russian companies. Trump cabinet officials in ethics scandals. Whoa, this is amazing. Eight months after taking control of the executive branch, the Trump administration saw its first cabinet member, Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price, resign after questions were raised about his conduct in office. But he might not be the last given the number of official probes facing other cabinet members. The Trump administration has 7 other cabinet or cabinet-level officials either currently, previously or potentially under scrutiny from in-house ethics watchdogs. Most of those inquiries relate, as Price's case did, to the use of pricey travel options at taxpayers' expense. Other cases relate to personal investments, relatives, interactions with the official's agency, and the leak of photos. The internet really creeps me out sometimes. With limited access to food, medicine and fuel, the hundreds of thousands of people trapped in the eastern suburbs of Damascus have developed a wide range of strategies to get through the government's tightening siege. Carnival parades draw millions across Germany. News DW 12.2018. This is an interesting perspective. Millions of revelers have braved cold winter weather to attend traditional carnival parades in Germany. The processions often take on a highly satirical note. Volkswagens roll in the Dieselgate emissions scandal is satirized on this float. Despite what looks like a catastrophe, however, the car maker still managed to achieve record sales in Germany in 2017. The Rhineland in Germany is famous for its anti-authoritarianism. So these two political figures are perhaps obvious targets. The leader of the ruling line Justice Peace in Poland, Jarosław Kaczynski, who is bearing a sickle with the word dictatorships, and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban with a hammer, set to smash legal rights. As was well to be expected, as President Donald Trump provided German float makers with plenty of material. Here, he is seen in a compromising pose with Russian bear seemingly in full control. Social Democrat Martin Schulz, who looks to have been one of the big losers as Germany tries to establish a coalition government, cut a very unhappy figure at the Düsseldorf parade. But the makers of this float think it is all his own fault, according to the pun written on the grinder. Hold up, you have to see this. Syria experts at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos weighing on what must be done to improve the humanitarian situation and alleviate the impact of war in Syria. Take a good look at what I just found. Attorney and Tenenbaum peacemaker Hein Kavot writes about the deteriorating humanitarian situation for women in and around Idlib, where she co-founded the Jarjanas and Dere Women's Peace Center with the EU last year. At Telegraph. Duchess of Cambridge puts degree to good use as she curates Victorian photography show. The Duchess of Cambridge is to put her history of art degree to good use as she curates her first exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery, in a photo. At The Hill. Jennifer Lawrence hits Trump as Pocahontas so I could play Elizabeth Warren in a movie. Now is the exact time to talk about gun control. Stay students from a high school near Parkland. At a good man out there. Hey YouTube in minutes on Mueller hilarious indictments. I knew Clinton would lose in 2015 and I didn't need Russian Twitter bots or Facebook ads. Hey, how did I know Clinton loses in 2015? My name is AJ Goodman and I am an author, columnist and journalist.
My name is H.A. Goodman.
Visit www.goodman.com for my writing and media appearances.
Why Hillary Clinton
based on negative favor app.
Bernie Sanders is the only hope for Democrats in 2016 and the only hope to prevent the Trump presidency. Number one, people don't trust Hillary Clinton. That's not just my opinion. Favorability polls show that generally across the nation, and especially in swing states, people have an unfavorable view of Hillary Clinton, and they find her not honest and trustworthy. So Quinnipiac University has a swing state. They had two swing state polls in the summer, in August and July. And in both of those polls, I'll give you the states right now. It was Colorado, Iowa, Virginia, Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. In these polls, voters responded that they find Clinton not honest and trustworthy. They have an unfavorable view of Hillary Clinton. And in Iowa, and Colorado and Virginia, voters found that she does not take care of their needs and problems. That's a quote from the actual Quinnipiac poll. In addition to the swing state polls, and that's 95 total electoral votes. So you have 270. You need 270 to win an election. If you have 95 that might go to a Republican, or at least a great percentage of those votes, electoral votes, because people don't trust the candidate and they don't like a candidate, that's horrible for Democrats. CBS News finds that 14% of Democrats will not support Hillary Clinton in an election. That might go up because progressives, I know many progressives who will basically protest and not vote at all if Hillary Clinton is the nominee, mainly because of neoconservative advisors. She was against gay marriage. She has a hawkish foreign policy. She was supported Keystone XL. She supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So there's a lot on the big issues. She's a moderate to conservative Republican, and that's everybody knows that. In terms of favorability, in terms of national polls, HuffPost pollsters Hillary Clinton favorability rating polls. Out of 10 national polls, she has unfavorable ratings in 9 of them. One poll, CBS poll, respondents by a 20-point margin found her unfavorable. Historically, Americans aren't going to vote for somebody that they don't like or they don't trust. That's just recent history and historically in presidential elections. In contrast, and just really quickly, Yahoo News finds 57% of Americans don't trust Hillary Clinton, and one CNN poll found 55% of Americans have an unfavorable view of Clinton. In contrast, and I'll try to keep it as short as possible because we're approaching 3 minutes, Bernie Sanders has much higher favorability ratings. People like Bernie Sanders. They trust Bernie Sanders. Even if they don't agree with him, they trust him and they like him. He beats Donald Trump by a wider margin. That's the biggest issue. And so, in terms of swing states, in terms of likability and favorability, he's far superior to Hillary Clinton. He's the only hope that Democrats have. Bernie Sanders is. Hillary Clinton is simply unelectable when you look at the polls.
At Cost Reports, at Washington Post Scoop General, John Kelly, under pressure over Porter, approves overhaul of WHS security clearance process and asks FBI to hand deliver updates, per 5-page memo obtained by at Washington Post. The White House has struggled over the past week to explain how the security clearance process worked in the case of aide accused of the mist. At Beard33 new channel trailer. Get some merc. Get a thank you shout out. Patreon SoundCloud podcast. At Daily Mail. The 13 Russian nationals charged with interfering in election. According to the indictment released on Thursday by Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller's office, Prigozhin led the effort. At Nigel Farage, at app breaking, FBI failure in Florida. Perhaps too much time spent on false Russia investigations. At Orwell Mood. Just a few off-the-cuff thoughts on the origins of new males. Just a few off-the-cuff thoughts on the origins of soy boys or new males, their possible upbringings, driving forces, politics, etc. Listener S Discord.
If you've been living under a rock for the past few months, you'll probably notice that there's a meme going around called the soy boy meme. And you have the Soylent Grin, which basically features either left-wing social media personalities, game journalists. Well,
burning the wick at both ends, screaming loud, stupid shit, scaring all of my old friends. Fell down on Bedford, hope that it's not broken. Safe to say, I might have had too much of some of these potions. I love you so much, I'm staying here all night. Don't wanna get up, I don't wanna stop, I don't wanna close my eyes. I'd rather not give a fuck and end up with some scars. The night's just long enough for me to build it all and let it fall apart. My mother told me that the world just got its plans. I wanna hold them till they burn right through my hands. Don't ask me questions, 'cause I'm tired of confessing, and I
Team, we have our hometown spotlight now. It's presented by Dave Edwards Toyota. It is Valentine's week, and we've got a love story for you.
That's right. In Simpsonville, two people who lost love got a second.
The White House has for the first time condemned the catastrophic cyber attack it claims Russia unleashed last year, crippling Ukraine's infrastructure. The virus, known as NotPetya, also spread to computers across the world, causing significant damage. Washington's strongly worded statement criticized what it called the Kremlin's ongoing effort to destabilize Ukraine. It follows the British government's comments on Thursday, also condemning Russia for the damage it says it caused to businesses across Europe. The cyber attack of June 2017, described as one of the worst on record, hit Ukraine's government ministries, nuclear plants, ATMs and business hubs. Here at Kiev airport, significant flight delays were caused to passengers. The attack then spread worldwide, causing problems in ports, factories and offices. The hack took control of computers and demanded ransom for their owners to regain access. The White House claims billions of dollars worth of damage was inflicted. The Kremlin has rejected the accusations that Russia was behind the attack.
Amerika Birleşik Devletleri'nin Florida eyaletinde bir lisede düzenlenen silahlı saldırıda hayatını kaybeden kurbanlar toprağa verilmeye başlandı. İlk cenaze törenleri Melo Pallok ve Eliza Al-Halefi isimli öğrenciler için düzenlendi. Öğrencilerden Melo 18 yaşındaydı ve üniversite imtihanına hazırlanıyordu. Eliza ise sadece 14 yaşındaydı.
Germany SSPD think record low in latest polls news DW16 2.2018.
Silahlı saldırıyı gerçekleştiren 19 yaşındaki Nicholas Cruz ise Perşembe günü mahkemedeki ilk duruşmasına çıkarıldı. Cruz 17 kez kasten adam öldürme suçundan yargılanacak. Bu arada sosyal medyadaki paylaşımlarında profesyonel bir silahlı okul saldırganı olmayı düşündüğünü yazdığı ortaya çıkan Cruz'un neden FBI tarafından takip alınmadığı ya da işlem yapılmadığı ise tartışma konusu. Aynı okulun eski öğrencilerinden olan ve okuldan atılan Cruz'un saldırıyı gerçekleştirme amacı belirsizliğini korurken, saldırganın beyaz, ırkçı bir gruba üye olduğu iddiası ise sosyal medyada geniş yer buldu.
Barack and Michelle Obama portraits unveiled in Washington News DW2.2018.
Da yeniden gündeme taşıdı. Bu arada Cuma günü birçok öğrenci protesto gösterisi düzenleyerek bireysel silahlanmanın kontrol altına alınmasını istedi. Trump yönetimine mesaj gönderen öğrenciler, öldürülenler sizin çocuklarınız da olabilirdi. Kendinizi değil bizi koruyun yazılı pankartlar taşıdı.
We have our hometown spotlight now. It's presented by Dave Edwards Toyota. It is Valentine's week, and we've got a love story for you.
That's right. In Simpsonville, two people who lost love got a second chance thanks to a local assisted living center. And that is where 7 News' Christine Scarpelli
Germany SSPD thinks the record low in latest polls news DW16 2.2018.
Time here at Springs, you know, over here in Simpsonville. That is where our love story takes place. We're so excited to share that with you. Noon and 5. Do not forget. Gotta see Curtis and June's story. Normally they're sitting over there in 2 chairs. They're not because it's breakfast, right? We gotta keep routine here. Jim, the director here, who's been here for, gosh,
life under siege, how people struggle to survive in Eastern Syria deeply.
I'm the only director we've had here, so that's something I'm proud of. So, and the other thing that I'm proud of is some of those people that I hired way back in 2000 and 2001 are still working for me.
Is that common?
No, it's not common. There's normally a pretty substantial turnover rate with
Goldman
employees.
Sachs CEO Blankfein received a $2 million pay bump in 2017.
They're doing, and they come back every year.
Why is that a benefit to keep the same employees here?
Well, you just have to think about, these are people that like routine, and so they know who's going to be coming to see them every day, who's taking care of them. If somebody's missing, they notice it immediately, and they want to know what happened to Nal, or why isn't somebody else here, so they'll come to me. So it's really good. I just think it just shows the compassion that my caregivers have for all of our residents for staying so long.
Definitely compassion for sure, and companionship, another great thing that it's here at the Springs, June and Curtis. That's our love story we're going to be featuring, and they have really found that too. You find that that's something you guys like to find for them in some cases.
We try to, first of all, we have a best friends model, so when they move in, we assign them a best friend, so they can kind of get the lay of the land, where everything is. We make sure that they're there for all the meals.
Aww.
And it's a way for them to socialize, and then they can meet that circle of friends and then other circle of friends. It kind of just grows that way.
Jim, I like
analysis
that. I
Iran and Israeli containment in Syria deeply.
Come on down. We'd love to put you in the circle. We love it here. The Springs in Simpsonville, guys. Again, lots to offer. We have that link at our website, as well as a story coming up in just a couple hours. We'll see you soon.
It's like love begets love. you know?
Right.
Jim gives out all that love. Everybody that works there gives out all that love, and then everybody just loves each other. It's very sweet.
Love fest.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. 8:18 is the...
Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
And welcome, my friends. It's great to have you with us here on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, something you're going to have to remember. You're going to have to constantly remind yourself as you listen to the program today. I am the mayor of Realville. I deal
New York
in
prosecutors
reality.
with Harvey Weinstein's studio had
And
reported
not too
St. Louis
many other
DW
people
well
are right now.
2.208.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday!
And once again, Open Line Friday, whatever you want to talk
What
about,
comes next, Syria
one
deeply.
day of the week, that's okay.
Politics, Yahoo News, latest
Telephone
news and
number
personal headlines.
282-2882. And the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. I want to start today asking a question.
Must-read coverage on Syria from 2017 Syria deeply.
If you watch the media, you watch television,
Yahoo
if you
Finance, Business Finance, Stock Market,
media.
Quote, News.
you cannot escape the reality of the conclusion that everybody wants to do something.
Islamic
That
scholar
people are
facing rape
shouting for
charges to
something to
undergo
be done
medical evaluation. France
about
24.
Mass shootings. Somebody's got to do something. It's a natural emotional reaction born of frustration, heartbreak, anger. Somebody's got to do something.
Hookup leader
But I
and
don't
voting
hear
scrutiny of
very
my
many
personal
people
life
at
like
all
Diana.
actually coming up with anything to do that's going to matter, that's going to make a difference, and that it's even grounded in something even close to reality. There's also something happening here that is perfectly illustrating a point that I've been making for a couple of years. And that is that the American media has become the power center and the source of
Willow
energy
search warrant selects
and
Jones
guidance
info hours there is a war on for your
for
mind.
the American left, not the Democrat Party, but the media.
Florida
The
high school
media
massacre
gives
portraits
the
of the
marching
17
orders.
victims.
The media are the activists.
Romney
The
officially
media
announces
are
Senator-elect Jones info hours there is a war on
not
for your mind.
involved in news. The media are not reporting anything. The media have become full-fledged advocates of one particular thing. They're not
Tiago
reporting
Rosenstein on grand jury indictment of Russians.
They are supporting the one particular thing they want, and they are ridiculing and condemning and lying about anybody who is not on the same page as they are. The Democrat Party used to be the organism that represented the American left.
No light at the
And
end of the
other
tunnel in
people
eastern Ghouta
in
Spiro
the
Syria
left
deeply.
followed the lead of the Democrat Party. Today, it is the media
Russian indictment PayPal,
that is
Yahoo,
leading.
Facebook
And the
used to
reason
sway
this is
us
important
politics.
is because many people don't know it. Many people don't realize it. Most people think the media is the news. Most people Well, I hope
Business
not
News
much,
Markets
but
reports and financial
a
news from
sizable
Sky News.
number of people think that when they turn on cable
Brexit deal should
news
strike fair balance, says
or the
Germany's
three
Merkel.
nightly newscasts or now the late-night comedy shows that they're actually getting news. And they're not. They're not getting anywhere near what is news. They're not even getting correct facts. People tuning into cable news, the three nightly newscasts, or reading the big newspapers are simply reading radical activism that is disguised as news and perpetrated as news because of the people who are presenting it. And it's important to keep this in mind throughout the entire lifespan of this particular story, because the only agenda here is political victory. Frankly, and I wish this weren't the case, but I don't think their primary interest is in getting rid of guns. I don't think that they would love to take out the NRA. They would love to diminish the NRA as a powerful political organization in America, but getting rid of guns...
Insanity in the House now 195 hours inspections in Los Angeles.
This is about getting rid of Republicans. This is about Republicans being characterized...
But Google Chrome ad blocker has already changed the way wired.
Consistently and regularly, so as to harm their electoral chances at the next election and all elections subsequent to the next ones coming up. Because if people were really grounded in reality, we would be listening to an entirely different set
Hold up, I'm looking around. Wild, this is just wild. Inmates cheer for suspected Chicago cop killer. Video shows App News. I can't believe I found this. As many as 5 inmates may face additional charges for clapping as the suspected killer of Chicago police CMDR. Paul Bauer was escorted from his first court appearance on Thursday. The Cook County Sheriff's Office released surveillance video that shows a group of detainees waiting in a holding cell to see a judge after suspect Shomari Leggett's bond hearing. As officers escort Leggett past the holding cell, some of the inmates can be seen clapping. We are taking all the action in our power to address this horribly despicable behavior, Kara Smith, Chief Policy Officer for the Cook County Sheriff's Office, said in a statement to App News. We've forwarded the video to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office for consideration in sentencing. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office told App News it has no comment on the video. The Sheriff's Office also revealed that it has begun transferring inmates involved to other jails in Illinois that work with their office. Budget chief wants billions more from Germany post-Brexit News DW 16 2.2018. This is an interesting perspective. Budget chief Jean Thorotinger says he wants Berlin to pay at least €3 billion more to cope with new tasks after Britain leaves the bloc. But he said that meant just 10 cents a day more for everyone in Germany. Germany will be expected to contribute about $3 billion to $3.5 billion, $3.76 billion to $4.4 billion more to the EU than it does now to help meet new challenges facing Europe. European Union Budget Commissioner Jean Trottinger said in remarks published Friday. With 3 or 3.5 billion euros more from Germany, we could close the gap left by Brexit and finance additional measures, Oettinger told the Bild newspaper. He cited the protection of the EU's external borders and the fight against terrorism as being among the new challenges facing the bloc. That would be about 10 cents per day more than now per head, he said. Britain plans to leave the EU on March 29, 2019. At Jack Vasovic. The Russia collusion tinfoil hat crowd has been exposed for what they always were. At Columbia Bugle. Profile Jennifer Lawrence accidentally owns Elizabeth Warren. Says she could play Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas for Day Feeling. Many moons ago, David Brock used every resource available to ruin the life of Anita Hill and anyone who supported her. At Tom Steyer. Special Counsel Mueller charges 13 Russians with interfering in 2016 election. The question is, why hasn't he, the president, represented and defended the people of the United States on this attack on our democracy?
Why has Donald Trump never acknowledged the attack? Why has he done nothing to protect us against the attack? And why did the head of the FBI say that he has not ordered them to protect us in 2018 from similar attacks? This is a great patriotic weekend.
To reject any support of hatred for Muslims, immigrants, and refugees. Syed says federal authorities, including immigration and customs enforcement, have too much power after arresting hundreds of people in targeted communities in just one day last September.
ICE is out of control, to say the least. In the Obama administration, ICE was targeting those people who are dangerous, who are criminals, and I believe that those people should be deported. But now they're targeting people who are just family members.
Republican State Representative Mike Bernskoetter of Jefferson City has an open mind for Muslim concerns.
We know that what the legislature is trying to do,
Bernskoetter is willing to build relationships with Missouri Muslim leaders.
So I appreciate their input because, you get one side of the story. It's nice to have both sides of the story. It's always nice to hear people's input on the legislation.
106B is where we're headed. Do you want to meet us there?
Missouri Muslim leaders say every lawmaker at the state capitol is willing to hear their concerns. Missouri Muslim leaders return home with two goals. They want every Missouri lawmaker to visit their local mosque. They want every Missouri Muslim to register to vote.
At Bongino. Can we all now finally agree the Russians are attacking our republic to cause chaos? The media humiliated themselves by playing into Russian hands and causing chaos by propagating an entirely false collusion hoax. The Dems joined in the chaos in an effort to discredit Trump.
secrets. It's all mine now. Is this your king?
This latest school shooting in Florida raises a number of issues that all point towards the sharp social decline that seems to be underway here in the U.S. It's a symptom of a kind of loss of social and civic values and commitment to the common good. I think this is very much a symptom of the rise of neoliberalism, which is a philosophy that's based on selfishness and the breaking down of social groups into unconnected individuals. And this kind of extreme individualism seems to affect people who are perhaps immature and brainwashed by the extremely violent media that we have here in the U.S., and sometimes brainwashed by our military conditioning as well. We're all trained to worship the mass murderers that we send to other countries to kill the citizens of those countries in service to American empire. So there are all of these factors combining, I think, that lead to the epidemic of gun violence in the United States, which is all too real. On top of this, though, we also have to keep in mind that many of the worst massacres that have happened, not only here in the U.S., but in European countries as well, are in fact false flag operations by professional killers that are run for political objectives, and indeed terrorizing a population through any kind of apparent random mass violence.
Barack and Michelle Obama portraits unveiled in Washington News DW 12-2.2018.
The overall effect of forcing people to run to the authorities for more security. That's what Operation Gladio did during the Cold War. During Operation Gladio, American military operatives murdered thousands of people in Europe.
Angela Merkel must stop cozying up to Turkey. German opposition demands News DW 15-2.2018.
And this led Europe to
Nobel laureate to quit Oxfam Ambassador Olamide JRTS sex scandal friends 24.
Here in the United States, we've had a number of well-documented false flag operations that have massacred large numbers of Americans. The September 11th false flag operation is the most notorious, but there have been others as well, including some gun massacres. The Orlando shooting, for example,
Deputy Agra Rosenstein on grand jury indictment of Russians.
To the alleged radical Muslim, but actual gay individual, Omar Mateen. So when these things happen, we have to question whether it may or may not actually be a real...
Israeli archaeologists unearth a Roman air mosaic. News DW 08-2.2018.
Often do tend to be these false flags.
Goldman Sachs CEO Blankfeiner received a $2 million pay bump in 2017.
Extreme individualism and militaristic conditioning that permeates American society. And after such wars as Vietnam and now especially the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister resigns after mass protests, France 24.
Horrific atrocities and really lost their soul.
Instagram removes post after Russia watched the borders.
Participating in these massacres and contributing to the culture of violence that leads to these massacres.
No light at the end of a tunnel in eastern Ghouta, Sparo, Syria deeply.
Religion in American life, I think, is a factor here as well. If we look back to the 1940s and 50s, before religious values had disappeared from the American public sphere, this was a time when
Ellen DeGeneres explains Bitcoin.
have children without being married. Divorce was almost unheard of, and so on.
The impact of Chechen and North Caucasian militants in Syria deeply.
And as religion has declined and public morality has declined,
New York prosecutor sues Harvey Weinstein's studio ahead of reported sale news DW 12.2018.
So we do have a real problem here socially in the United States.
The Syrian doctor building an underground hospital for women in Syria deeply.
Turn it around. I think the empire is collapsing, and it will probably be after complete imperial collapse, followed by a period of chaos even worse than what we have now, that something new and one hopes better will finally emerge.
Turkish court sentences 6 journalists to life in prison over 2016 failed coup. France 24. The fate of minorities in post-ISIS Syria and Iraq. Syria deeply. Never afraid French 16-year-old snowboarder Pereira wins surprise Olympic silver. France 24. I'm looking for things. Found the juicy. Public company changes name to Riot blockchain, sees shares rocket. I hate going into the deep dark parts of the internet. As Bitcoin hit record highs in late December, a hot new stock was making news on a daily basis. Riot Blockchain's stock shot from $8 a share to more than $40, as investors wanted to cash in on the craze of all things crypto. But Riot had not been in the crypto business for long. Until October, its name was Biooptics, and it was known for having a veterinary products patent and developing new ways to test for disease. That might sound somewhat like a type of newly minted blockchain company that has gained SEC attention. Nobody should think it is okay to change your name to something that involves blockchain when you have no real underlying blockchain business plan and try to sell securities based on the hype around blockchain, SEC Chairman Jake Layton said, speaking in generalities in recent testimony to Congress. The SEC declined to comment to CNBC about Riot Blockchain. The company did make an investment in a cryptocurrency exchange in September and 2 months later did purchase a company that has cryptocurrency mining equipment, but paying more than $11 million for equipment worth only $2 million, according to SEC filings. That purchase and the company's name change aren't its only questionable moves. Turkish court sentences 6 journalists to life in prison over 2016 failed coup. France 24. Would you just look at this? Gosh. International News 24/7. Text by France 24. Follow France 24_ on Twitter. Latest update 2018-02-16. Those sentenced on Friday include Ahmet Altan, the former editor-in-chief of Taraf newspaper, his brother, economics professor and journalist Mehmet Altan, and prominent journalist Nazli Ilikuk. The Altan brothers were charged with giving coded messages in a television talk show a day before the abortive July 15, 2016, military coup against President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Whoa. The ability of Syria and Iraq's minorities to rebuild their communities in the post-ISIS landscape will depend very much on the political situation in these countries, according to analyst Yusuf Kalian.